Welcome to the Tuesday Night's Triumph Over Targeting podcast. I'm your moderator, Ella. Tonight we'll be discussing the technology and tactics behind targeting, activism, shielding, and support. If you are new to the call, please stay on and we will get you some support and some additional TalkShoe podcast numbers as well as some helpful links and websites. This is a solutions and educational-based podcast. My goal is that everyone here may get something out of tonight. And if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions or just need support or contact information for anyone else, you can email me at tiangel2016@gmail.com. Again, tiangel2016.com. And tonight we have a guest. We have Mr. Sean Andrews, and he's a doctor. Dr. Sean Andrews holds a PhD in materials science and engineering, an MS in physical organic chemistry, a BS in medicinal chemistry, and a BA in chemical education. Dr. Andrews has published several notable peer-reviewed articles and worked in collaboration with several institutions, including DARPA, the Department of Energy, the National Institute of Health, the National Science Foundation, NASA, and several others. Dr. Andrews' more notable achievements include the development of tunable paper-based diagnostic devices for portable field sample analysis, the development of technologies enabling the use of water as a fuel source in vehicle applications, and he's currently working on flexible electronic display devices as wearable clothing for camouflage applications, and Dr. Sean Andrews is a targeted individual. So thank you so much for coming to the call. We really, really appreciate it. And if you want to maybe elaborate a little bit on your history or your education or anything maybe I didn't include, feel free to do that.
No, thank you for the wonderful introduction, Ella, and I thank all your listeners for tuning in today, and I hope that you can all maybe take something out of what I have to say today. There's not much more to say about my educational background. However, I will get a little bit personal here and state the process by which I became aware. So, like Ella mentioned, I'm a scientist and I'm also targeted, and I became aware of the targeting around June of 2015, so not very long ago. It was a confusing time. I was followed by strange people, lots of red cars. There were strange people in my quiet neighborhood, once quiet neighborhood, walking dogs, joggers, people I didn't recognize. I wasn't really able to sleep, and I don't know why. I didn't know why at the time. My friends started to worry because, of course, I started to express what I was observing, what I was feeling, and so forth. And some of them started to distance themselves away from me. And it just seemed like everything I had worked for was being stripped away. So I'm not usually very personal. I don't have a really strong relationship with my parents. But I decided to call my mother one day last summer, and I started the conversation with, Mom, I'm being followed by strange people in red cars. There are people following me on the street that are making weird gestures, touching their face, and so forth. My mom just suddenly let out this shriek of like agony, screaming, "No, no, no, not my son." And this was really confusing. I didn't understand. When she gathered herself, she asked me to sit down and said that we need to talk. She then described to me what we all know as gang-stalking. My mom was born in a communist country where gang-stalking was very prevalent. She had memories of it and was told many stories by my grandparents. Now, she lives in another state, but she then proceeded to tell me about the program, and it was everything that I was observing. She just told me how to think, how to act, and react to the gang-stalking. She told me how to protect myself, and finally she gave me the courage to be strong, like a good mother does. So my process was aided by my family, by my support network, and I'm very fortunate to some people go about their lives and face these troublesome situations without understanding what's actually happening to them. But like Ella said, I'm a scientist, and research is in my genes. So over the last 15 months, I've conducted extensive research on all the facets of being a targeted individual. My research is corroborated by my own experiments, so I've tried to reverse engineer the program using very, very simple tactics, which we can go into later on. I've tried to figure out what the objectives of the programs are. I've conducted interviews with journalists, with whistleblowers, with other TIs, even law enforcement. So today, I present to you all my research with 3 goals in mind: to educate, to engage, and to empower you. To educate you about the program, to engage each of you personally. I would be giving away my contact information. And I also ask of you all to engage in the cause and participate. I want you all to understand your situation, take control of it, and then help your fellow brother and sister who are also in the program. And that's where the empowerment comes in. So with that, I begin with a quote from Amnesty International back in 1996. Excuse me for one moment. So in 1996, Amnesty International stated, throughout the world, on any given day, a man, woman, or child is likely to be displaced, tortured, killed, or disappeared at the hands of governments or armed political groups. More often than not, shares the blame. So we have to start somewhere, and this is sort of organizing this talk is difficult because there are so many aspects to incorporate, and I want to tell it all to you all at the same time, and I want to form a logical progression of thoughts, but it's really difficult, and I ask you all to bear with me, to take notes. It's going to be a lecture format, and this is the best I can come up with as of right now. So let's agree on some facts here. You know that your neighbors are in on it. You know that your landlords are in on it. You know that your coworkers are in on it. You get the workplace harassment, noise campaigns by the neighbors, landlords seemingly have to do a lot of work in your apartment and whatnot, perhaps when you're not even home. You know that the taxi servers are in on it, the garbage men, where they slam, say, recycling bottles into their trucks, just on your property. You know that the ambulances are in on it, where there are sirens that continuously drive by 3-4 times a day. Take it a step above that. We know that commercial businesses are in on it. So we all see tons of FedEx trucks. We see things like, say, pest control vehicles, like Orkin, for instance. We see sewage trucks constantly in our pathway. It's like we're destined to meet up with these people. We know that law enforcement is involved. Local police departments, sheriffs, troopers. We see agency participation with a high likelihood of being audited. We see the FAA participating with the diversion of flights over our homes. We see DHS and FBI also involved with the use of their small engine planes, their Cessna 182s, 208s, and whatnot. And that's been well documented, especially within the last year. And we see a lot of NSA involvement with the interception of our communications. If you take one step above that, we see DoD assets. So we see Predator drones. I personally have been followed in very close proximity by Predator drone, and I've also heard it up in the sky. But it's a very, I should just say that's a very, very intimidating, scary sight. This is an aircraft that you associate with all-out war, and having it just several hundred feet above your head is a little bit concerning. We see Boeing quadcopters, so the little black surveillance copter that I mean, I've seen this approach several times now on the water in New York Harbor, and at least for myself, and I've heard this from other TIs. I've also report Apaches and Black Hawk helicopters doing flybys or hovering over your home. So at the very top, we see DoD assets. At the very bottom, we see the people you run into every day, neighbors, local businesses, and so forth. But just using a basic logic, we would say that the hierarchy, the chain of command, starts with the very top. So for the talk, I'm going to focus on DoD. And this is what I focused in for my research, because at some level there had to exist communications, guides, operation manuals, and so forth that would dictate how to go about performing these operations, if in fact they were responsible. Now, more often than not, a lot of the secret, classified, top secret programs that we don't have access to are available in the public domain, but the program itself is masked by the use of ambiguities to cover what is actually going on. So again, the focus is on DoD, the focus on the military. And if we go to the Posse Comitatus Act, it states that the use of military personnel from performing various functions within the homeland is prohibited. However, when directed by the President, the use of military operations for homeland defense is a constitutional exception to the Act. When performing homeland defense operations, Title 10, United States Code, forces are not subject to the restriction of the Posse Comitatus Act. Under the directions of the President, where do we see that? Well, we see that in several executive actions. I've always mixed up the number. I think it's 13233, but I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. We see that with the National Defense Authorization Act of 2016 and the one before that. So we can say that the military can perform operations on U.S. soil against enemy combatants because they have the authorization to do so under the President. Let's move forward. What's DoD's framework for homeland defense? Well, their framework includes strategies, plans, and actions taken to detect, deter, prevent, and defeat threats and aggression against the homeland. Now, I should also add here that experimentation is needed to ensure the effectiveness of homeland defense. Then we have to ask ourselves, what's a threat? Well, a threat comes in many forms. A threat comes in the form of a whistleblower, an activist, a protester, a movement, politicians, constitutionalists, gun advocates, and perhaps even an ex-lover. And we've all sort of heard of, or most of us have heard of Lovent, especially with the recent release of the Snowden movie. So then we ask ourselves, what are DoD's homeland defense objectives? Well, there are 8 of them, and they are to identify the threat, dissuade adversaries, ensure defense of the homeland, and deny an adversary's access, ensure access to cyberspace and information, protect the domestic population and critical infrastructure, deter aggression and coercion by conducting global operations, decisively defeat any attack if deterrence fails, that means death, and recovery of the force to restore readiness and capabilities after an attack or incident. So of those, I'm going to go ahead and just focus in on deter aggression. And we need to define deterrence. And I'm going to read you the official definition of deterrence according to the DoD. And it is very convoluted, it's very confusing, but I will attempt to translate it for you. So deterrence is a state of mind brought about by the existence of a credible threat of unacceptable counteraction against adversaries, or the prospect of their mission failing to achieve desired objectives. So translated, if you're an adversary, if you're a TI, anything you attempt to do to increase your resources, social, monetary, political, safety, will be thwarted to the extent that you understand that you are destined to fail and no longer pursue those resources. One moment, please. So how does the DoD implement deterrence? They have a concept called the Joint Operating Concept, and it's an effort to identify and institutionalize homeland defense and unconventional warfare. I want you to remember the term unconventional warfare because we're going to touch on it in quite a bit here coming up. So the Joint Operating Concept serves two purposes. It defines how joint forces must operate to counter irregular threats. Now, joint forces would include collaborations between, say, the DoD, FBI, NSA, DEA, just about local police, your local enforcement agencies, law enforcement agencies, your state troopers, and so forth. There are various joint operating task forces. And irregular threats include you and I. The second purpose is to guide force development, material and non-material capability development, and experimentation. So they set the standard by which everyone acts. Their approach is simply to prevent, deter, disrupt, and defeat these threats, where prevention is the primary focus of the effort, since it is preferable to deal with threats and the conditions that give rise to them. So once a threat is established, the joint force will aim to deter, disrupt, and defeat it. Now, the joint operating concept, and just stick with me here, because I promise you we're coming to the very important part here. The joint operating concept is focused on unconventional warfare, which is defined as operations conducted by, with, or through irregular forces in support of a resistance movement or insurgency or conventional military operations. So this definition reflects two criteria. Unconventional warfare must be conducted by, with, or through surrogates, and such surrogates must be irregular forces. Finally, in keeping with the covert nature of unconventional warfare, it has involved the conduct of classified surrogate operations. So very simply, unconventional warfare is a support to a resistance movement. And I'm here to tell you today that you are the adversary. And your obnoxious neighbor, the color-coordinated perps on the street, the cop car that regularly follows you home, the small engine plane circling above you for hours, wherever you go, the complete invasion of your rightful privacy is the resistance movement. We've seen plenty of examples of these tactics being used by the U.S., not in our homeland, but say in 1980s in Nicaragua. We've seen it with the support of resistance forces to the Mujahideen in the 1980s as well in Afghanistan. We've seen the support of the resistance forces in, say, operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom The focus of unconventional warfare is on the native resistance elements, not U.S. force structure and procedures. So the goal is to leverage the assets on the ground, the assets that can be adversarial, or that can be resistance forces against the adversary. I should also say that unconventional warfare is one of the U.S. Special Operation Commands, so U.S. SOCOM. It's one of their core activities, with their goal being to coerce, disrupt, and overthrow a government or adversary in this case. Now, recent legislation by the National Defense Authorization Act really defines a threat, a U.S. citizen, a whistleblower, as an enemy combatant. So although the definition here is government, it just means a threat. And I just wanted to sort of outline that. So to coerce, disrupt, or overthrow a government or occupying power by operating through or with an underground, auxiliary, and guerrilla force in a denied area. So how does it work? How does unconventional warfare work? How does the TI program work from the operations side? Well, there are 7 steps. And before we get into the 7 steps, there's this equilibrium state, this state where there's a status quo, and the state, the government, establishes what's normal or default, and left unchanged, nothing unpredictable will happen. There won't be an uprising. There won't be a movement. You don't have to worry about a whistleblower and so forth. You don't have to worry about an occupation in Oregon. This is the steady state. This is the goal. So your TI program is very orchestrated, and you're being watched for the most part, except on very few cases. You're being watched for a very long time. I can trace the origins of my program back to when I was 14 years of age. I'm 32 years of age right now, but many of you can do the same. And that is because phase 1 is preparation. So this is where the resistance and external sponsors conduct psychological preparation to unify the population against the established adversary, or prepare the population to accept support. So this is where essentially your region is observed and scanned. The people that could possibly be assets are taken into account and inventoried, and they do a complete assessment of everything around you. Phase 2 is initial contact. So this is where the U.S. government and their various agencies coordinate with allied government entities or a resistance leadership for desired U.S. support. Now, this could be just local law enforcement, church down the street. This could be maybe students from an academic campus. It can take many forms. Phase 3 is infiltration. So this is where the Special Force Team infiltrates the operational area, establishes communications with its base, and contacts the resistance organization. These are the perps moving into the perp house. These are them going around and starting the slander campaign against you. Phase 4 is organization. This is where the Special Force Team organizes, trains, and equips the resistance with the emphasis being on developing the infrastructure. Now, this is kind of neat because this has taken a new shape in recent years. So you just don't have one person or two people orchestrating the event. This process is aided by technology. When you travel somewhere and you have vehicles intersect you at every location, who do you suppose tells those vehicles where to be? How to form that bubble around you? Let's say you go to an unexpected location. There's always that bubble of cars around you, and they all have to move in unison, and they all have to receive instruction in unison. So developing the infrastructure is getting the participants, the resistance forces, the fellow people in your town, that is, acquainted with the technology that helps them harass you. So it tells them to turn right, turn left, speed up, slow down. That's not one person on a switchboard calling the shots. Phase 5, the buildup. This is where the Special Forces team assists with expansion into an effective resistance organization. So they establish a base, and they leverage that base to recruit more people. So this is where your neighbors, some neighbors are told something atrocious about you. You're a prostitute, you're a drug dealer, you're a child abuser, you're a terrorist. So you're mentally unstable. And that negativity, whether it's expressed or not, is propagated. So, did you hear about that guy who lives in that house? I hear he's this, I hear he's that. Right? And it's unfortunate, but a lot of times you don't need very much validation to believe a lie. And we all know this. Phase 6, employment. So this is where unconventional warfare forces conduct combat operations until link-up or the end of hostilities. This is what we all know right now. This is being aware. This is where you continue to be harassed, overtly to you, perhaps covertly to others, until your end, whether that's death, whether that's arrest, whether that's being institutionalized, whether that's taking your own life. Finally, we have phase 7, the transition. So this is where the forces revert to national control, shifting to regular forces or demobilizing, again, going towards that steady state. Now, this last step is pretty important because here there's a game plan on what to do when their mission is accomplished. When you're dead, when you're hospitalized, let's just take death for instance. Let's say that you expressed what was going on to several people in those with interest and believe you. Well, there has to be a plan and effect for them to deal with anyone who might ask too many questions or inquire about your death, the circumstances, and so forth. So phase 7, the transition, is very, very important. We focus on that because it's a very precarious time for them where they can be exposed if they don't control the message. So with that, that concludes my condensed introduction to unconventional warfare, or as we know it, the Targeted Individual Program. Now, this is a talk that was condensed from 3 hours down to maybe just over 30. And there are a lot of parts that are not here. There are a lot of aspects that are left undiscussed. We can talk about targeting. We can talk about information operations. We can talk about psychological operations. But hopefully, if you guys are interested in what I have to say, you can express your interest to Ella, and perhaps I can be invited back to discuss those issues. So with this first section completed, I will gladly take questions from Ella, or maybe any questions that were asked in the chat before we continue on to the next section.
Okay, I do have a couple questions, and I'll go ahead and open up the floor. Do you also receive directed energy weapons, V2K, synthetic telepathy, or RNM, or any other various means of targeting? I know you're getting gang-stalked, and I understand that, but can you elaborate a little bit on that, on your targeting?
Yeah. So I'm going to be very general, only because, and I'm very big on counter tactics, but it's to my advantage not to express how I feel about certain tactics.
Sure.
So gang stalking, a lot of directed energy. I get vehicle harassment. I get harassment on the streets. There always seems to be a traffic jam when I'm running a little bit late to a meeting or so forth. I get workplace harassment by people I've known for many, many years. I get bad service. I get I've had fraudulent credit charges. I've been audited 3 times in 1 year after.
Typical.
My friends who have immediately noticed the oddities happening around me have been attacked themselves. My mother's attacked regularly. So yeah, it's been extensive, but at the same time, it's a chess match because I am not a soft target by any means. I will take every opportunity I can to document when it's convenient, when I don't take away from my life, or when it's an opportunity that's too great to give up. So with that being said, I do get aerial harassment, and I do step out and try to help everyone that I possibly can. And we all know that this program is based on almost like a classical conditioning model, where you get a little bit less harassment if you become sort of the pacifist, and you get the negative harassment in terms of the black cars and so forth, and increased directed energy weapons when you're perceived as doing something bad. So I'm at the point right now where a lot of those tactics have become ineffective. So they resort to attacking my heart rate continuously. In terms of blood pressures, they're 210 over 115, where that calls for immediate hospitalization. You can blow your aorta and so forth. It's very uncomfortable. I walk around with an ECG strapped to my belt all day long, and I have to take several precautions. All at the same time, I look normal. I behave normal. No one knows I'm doing it. Everything's documented. But the harassment has come to that where seemingly the only way that they perceive to get to me is my death, which is a great thing. It means I'm being effective. It means I'm doing a good thing. At least that's the way I see it.
And then you had mentioned that your mother had, explained that she, was distraught that you were being gang-stalked. So was she gang-stalked while she was in her country, or she just seems to know about it and she was just familiar with it, or was she going through gang-stalking herself prior to your gang-stalking?
So that's an interesting question. So her father, my grandfather, was marginalized as a result of this system in their native country, where he was blacklisted to a point where he had to, say, work at an incredible distance from home, and he wasn't barely given any pay, barely given any food. My grandmother would say send him bread by mail, and the mailings would take so long where his only sustenance was mailing of bread to him out in the field when he was just working under intense heat and terrible conditions. It would arrive to him moldy. So he would resort to eating moldy bread just to stay alive and try to make a couple pennies to send back home. When they were able to come to this country, I was told this, and I believe it. He came with a family with almost nothing. He was finally let go and allowed to leave, but they were so poor where he would try to supply for his wife, my grandmother, and my mom the best that he could, but he couldn't supply for himself. So he would do things like eat dog food because it was the cheapest thing that he could afford to keep himself alive while providing some sort of livelihood for the family. So it has followed. It did affect my grandparents, and there was an incident early in the 2000s where my mom had a psychological breakdown. She said that people were watching her. There were bugs in the TVs. Just really, really bizarre behavior. And we thought, what is wrong with? We thought there was something wrong with her. Interestingly, she had a couple of businesses, and she would buy buildings and rent them out, and she'd get the most awful people moving in. They would destroy the premises, and they basically, she had bought 7 or 8 rental properties, and she had to file for bankruptcy because they would destroy the property and not pay. And it turns out that eviction laws in New York are not on the landlord's side. So, not only did she report this at one time, she got better after that, but every attempt that she made to better herself, better our lives, was thwarted. So she has been affected, but looking back, there seemed to have been a gap. It's hard to say. It really is.
Right.
But again, my targeting, I can trace back to about the age of 14, right. At least when they started their operations.
And it just became very evident when you realized you were being followed.
Right. And it happened right before it seemed to evolve and grow until I could no longer ignore it. Right before I had to defend my PhD. So to the point where I was poisoned with some, I don't want to say bird flu or some virus that incapacitated me for over a week with the worst headaches I can possibly imagine. I never go to the doctor. I've been very healthy. I'm not a stubborn guy. But when I first felt the feeling of whatever this was, I was scared. I called my friend who's a nurse, and I said, I need to go to the hospital. I need your help. I took me to the hospital. They ran every test they could possibly do. They even did a spinal tap, and they found absolutely nothing. And I was sort of, the only thing I can do is lay on the couch and in a fetal position, put ice on my head, and I had to reschedule my PhD defense that one time, and then I had to reschedule another time to do some other very strange events, and it seemed like it all came to a head to try to stop me from, obtaining my terminal degree.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in the end, I wasn't exactly a good child. And what I mean is, well, I'm just too curious for my own good. So, in 3rd grade and 5th grade, 2 separate schools, my teachers said he's the smartest kid I've ever had and also the most dangerous kid I've ever had. and I find it amusing. But like I said, I've been too curious for my own good to where in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was part of a group, a hacking group similar to today's Anonymous. I wasn't very good, but I think at that point I may have attracted some unwanted attention by perhaps the NSA. Now, that's a presumption. It's really hard to say.
Right.
I could have been targeted since birth. None of us really know. And if you think you know, my next section here, my next talk is going to be on deception. So whatever you think is the cause is usually propagated in the form of street theater or different indicators shown to you, so you continue to believe that lie. So that's where I think it started for me, but I can't be certain.
Yeah, it's really tough to say. Well, I have more questions on the topics you just discussed, but I'm going to open up the floor and see if maybe let some other people ask, and then if the question doesn't arise naturally, I'll go ahead and ask you before we move on. So I see Central Massachusetts. Hi, you're on the air. Central Massachusetts, you have a question for Sean?
Yes, Sean, I was interested. My name's Frank Allen. I represent Targeted Massachusetts, and I also represent thousands of TIs. And I'm curious as to where you get your basis for everything being government. I realize it started there, but what I'm trying to understand is you've got a program laid out, and it's very efficiently laid out so that we all can see it. But I will tell you that 50% of the people that I know don't have Blackhawks flying around. We don't have people chasing us around with iPhones pointing them at us. And I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but most of us live quiet lives with no one bothering us except for the perps. And what I grew to know when this first started was that I became paranoid in the beginning because I did not understand what was going on. Okay? Because the perps will give you subliminals that will say, okay, this one's watching you, that one's watching you. Well, I learned that that wasn't correct, and that every time I go into a store, no one is actually watching me. And I buy what I want, I leave the store. If I want to stay in Walmart for 2 hours, I will. And I am up. I've given my phone number out to quite a few different people. And I am up most of the night fielding calls from TIs that are in trouble. And I noticed you mentioned that they were elevating your heart rate. They do that to me too. And it's a very, very tough situation to be in. And relaxation techniques that they come up with do not work. Some of the sedatives that they have out will work, because I have noticed what happens to me is I get severe tinnitus to the point where I'm hospitalized. It'll be time number 11, day before yesterday, and the tinnitus works on anxiety. The anxiety works on the tinnitus, and pretty soon you're upset to the point where you're shaking, you're way over the top, anxiety-ridden, you don't know what to do, and you're holding on. And I've been there to the point where I've had my car towed. But I'm also learning how to deal with it. And there's a lot of points that you've brought up that are very valid. I appreciate you bringing them up. But I guess my point here in so many words is that a lot of this started military. It is not military anymore. I have 12 or 13 TIs, I believe, who know who their attackers are and why. And I am one of those. And this program and the subsequent information and gear is available everywhere. China is one spot. A lot of DARPA's programs have been duplicated, copied, changed. So that's one thing to discuss. Another is places like Georgia Tech University. They teach this stuff. I just did a series of posts on this that if you look at Georgia Tech's curriculum, you will be amazed. And I'm sure that's echoed in many colleges. And I was just curious, I guess my question is, where do you get most of your information on this government-type attack?
Well, Frank Allen, I appreciate your comments and questions. I can address every single one of your points. Most of my information comes from declassified government manuals and also theses and dissertations that come out of the various schools of the military. For instance, the United States Air Force Academy. So one way to understand the current affairs of the government are to examine what they're teaching their cadets, their students. They are bound to take the reins, if you will. The other are to look at not only historical manuals dating back to the 90s, but also trying to get your hands on the most recent ones. So here's where I give credit to the Federation of Associated Scientists that have worked, tooth and nail to get a lot of these manuals declassified. And these manuals state almost verbatim, at least for conventional warfare, what I've stated to you today. This is the framework. And I understand that, I may get Blackhawks. Other people may not. And my response to that is that every program is different. And if you just recall one of my points that I made under the joint operating concept, right, it was an effort to identify and institutionalize homeland defense. So once you teach these tactics to your corroborating agencies, once DOD, do these joint task forces, once they work with our DA partners, once they work with the state troopers, local law enforcement, those methods are learned, and they are propagated and continue to be used, whether that's at the direction of the DOD or not. So the DOD can take either the lead role or the support role, but there are also different elements that they know these attacks are effective. They participated in sort of maybe these support roles, and they continue to use these methods on people. We see this a lot in the form of police harassment, of, say, those that expose police corruption, those that videotape police shootings, or are part of, say, the Black Lives Matters movement. Did you want to say something real quick?
Yeah. I realize that in the past there have been FBI, and you always see some police that are caught in a bad light. I work with my Boston Bureau of the FBI continually, and I also work with the local police. And I will tell you straight up what they are waiting for. They are waiting for the laws. And as recently as April the 16th of this year, we had a family of cyber terrorists sentenced to life imprisonment. And that is a big plus for us, and it's something to look at. And you also have to look at human nature to a degree. If you're looking at a military installation who is performing these tasks, they have shifts. Probably a gentleman is on this shift for 1 or 2 hours tops. Now, when these programs fall into private hands, many times the manuals and or instructions there too are not available. So these guys drive themselves crazy. They become what I call addicted gamers. They sit in front of their screens as though it was a game. They start piling up hamburger wrappers and coffee cups, and they sit there. They haven't showered for 2 weeks. And this is what happens to the privatized units. Now, as I said, I've known 10 to 12 or 14 people that know exactly who their attackers are, and it's private sector. Now, to me, if I had a choice between a private sector perp and a military perp, I would go with the military perp, and I'll tell you why. What I've heard, like I say, I know thousands of TIs, and I represent them. They're a lot easier than these privatized perps because the privatized ones don't have any rules. And once again, this was supposed to be directed overseas, all of this stuff. And I think when somebody comes home from war and they've been doing this, that's all they know how to do, and they are addicted to it. So what you have to look at, a big portion of it is human nature. And I'm very happy that you were on tonight so that I can listen to your viewpoints, because they're multifaceted, and I really enjoy that. But I just wanted to add that.
Frank, I appreciate the kind comments. And again, I just want to stress that there are many topics within this program that I have not addressed, and I'm prepared to talk about. So I recently gave a 2-day seminar over at Kate Ryan's home in Massachusetts, and we had some again and assisted me to tune the conversation, tune the narrative here. Now, Frank, I want to address a couple of your points, and they're very valid, I should say. So, we said that everybody's program is different, and we said that paranoia can be self-perpetuating, and that's absolutely true. And that's a big strategy within the program. Now, maybe my case is a little different. There was a period of time. So I grew up in pretty impoverished areas of high crime, areas where you have to constantly look over your shoulder. I was also in a protective custody program due to some matter I don't care to discuss, but that tends to make you a little bit hyper vigilant. But throughout that program, you learn, what looks normal and what does not. And there were situations that were precarious that very easily stood out to me. So what I'm saying is, at least in my case, I learned the difference between a normal situation, normal human gestures, normal human body behaviors, micro expressions, and so forth, versus those that are unnatural or forced. That may not be the case for everyone. In my case, I feel confident. Could I be wrong? Yes. Have I made the mistake of treating someone very hostile, thinking they were perp? Absolutely. It's happened, especially early on. But I think I have a good handle of it now.
I think you're doing very well, sir.
Thank you, Frank. So regarding the tinnitus, I really don't want to talk about the directed energy weapons today, but those things are measurable, and I'm conducting some fairly thorough experiments, and I hope to provide a lot of information to the community here in the next coming weeks. But as a result of a lot of these attacks being measurable, some are not, and some, I will say, I can give you parameters, but I can't give you I can't give you the actual weapon. I can tell you what it is, and I can tell you what it's not. But measuring, provided that you have the right tactics, the right equipment is one of the most effective methods. Again, I would caution you that your quality of life matters, and the perception of others matters a lot. So it's a careful balance. Now, back to, you made comments about recently law enforcement caught cyber terrorists. I want to be very clear by saying that I understand that law enforcement, for the most part, has very good intentions, and they are good people, and for the most part, they want only the best. And I'm not disparaging the majority of any law enforcement personnel or even military personnel. But nor do I, no, let me say that for a different time. But at the same time, I believe that they're compartmentalized. So they don't have a full view of the picture. And I absolutely agree with you that, we have people sitting for hours at a time, like a gamer, and performing all these acts, and they sort of lose touch. And, I actually have a breakdown. So each person has a team, right? This is not the neighbor next door controlling your program, right? You have someone that decodes your digital communications, your computer information. You have another guy that does intelligence, another guy that does logistics. So if you want to look at what their official titles are, they're J2, J3, J4, J5 and 6, and so forth. We have another guy that plans the directorate for the Joint Staff. And at the very center of all these people that control all of these different situations, as well as the external agencies that participate, you have one guy. And that guy is your tactical commander. So there's a guy.
Excuse me. Can I give you my email address? And I would like to pass this on to my people, and so that we can, understand. And this will make it to all of my people. And my email address is frank.thearcher@gmail.com.
So ARCHER?
Archer, right?
Mm-hmm.
At gmail.com.
Right.
And I believe Ella has my phone number. If anybody is in trouble, I believe I've given it to her already. They need somebody to call. They need somebody to talk to. I'm available 24 hours a day. And but I will spread this, and I'm very interested in your conversation and the points that you're bringing up.
I really appreciate it, Frank. And this is what I'm here for. This is what I fight for every day. My goal is to bring everyone to the same narrative, to the same message, understand what's going on with them, and unite together so all their energy isn't just focused on defense and wasted on not understanding situations. I want us to come together as a force multiplier, to be heard, to knock on senators' doors.
Well,
so
I would like to meet with you one day shortly and see if we can put our heads together and come up with a definitive plan. We do have other people that are in engineering that are coming up with countermeasures of our own, and we are getting closer and closer by the day. And I would like to join you in your efforts.
That sounds amazing, Frank. Thank you.
And Frank, I do have your number, so I will pass it on to him.
Thank you, Ella.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
I guess my next question is probably obvious, and I'm sure I ask most guests that come on the call. What type of shielding mechanisms do you have in place? What kind of shielding are you trying to create? I've read some interesting emails from you. I believe it was you that mentioned a blanket, a special type of blanket to maybe protect from directed energy. Is that something you can go on to and elaborate on a little bit?
Yeah, so I can't let this control my life, right? So I can't let this make me appear abnormal or strange to in my workplace, in my relationships, and so forth. So I often choose just to endure the attacks with no reaction whatsoever. I'm fairly good at it. And we're going to talk about, in our next segment, we're going to talk about deception mainly, but mainly that there is a termination phase. So when you don't react, you continue to be attacked by certain methods. And I'm not saying this is going to stop immediately. Right? If their tactic becomes ineffective, there's no reason to continue that tactic, and it gets terminated. Now, with that being said, there are times you do need to protect yourself. And I will tell you that the most effective way to protect yourself is water. So I'm sure all of you will agree that the place that you find relief is a steamy shower where you're not attacked. Now, I've read stories where people fill up little sandwich baggies with water and pin them to their wall, and that's I think that's a little bit ridiculous. But I'm hesitant to give this as a I haven't validated this for myself because I haven't received it. But my idea was to purchase something that I could wear that's relatively lightweight, that contains water. It doesn't have to be 100% water. And I was trying to figure out, can I design my own vest or something to that effect? As it turns out, I was wearing just a gallon-sized bag with maybe a cup of water pressed up against my chest, and that was very, very effective at reducing the cardiac attacks from the frontal side. Now, every time I lifted my arm, they attack on the side, or they can attack on the back. But it's a little bit harder for them to attack your heart from the back than it is from the front. But regarding what I'm going to try next, and it's called a weighted therapy blanket, and they also sell vests. So the purpose of these things are, they're usually for autistic children who find comfort in tactic feedback. So placing a weighted blanket over them. And the blanket is filled with a variety of materials. So you can find them filled with just regular plastic beads, mostly polyethylene. This is the most common because it's there's no worry about allergens, there's no worry about molding, and so forth. But plastic isn't going to block the attacks. You need water. So alternative fillers are buckwheat, millet, sandstone, and those three all contain between 9 and 15% water. So I purchased both a blanket, and these things aren't cheap, a blanket and a vest for about $300. And it's an experiment, but the goal here is that I can wear the vest, maybe concealed underneath regular clothing, and get through my work day, get through my lab without being attacked, and maybe get some sleep, right? Get some sleep where my heart rate isn't at 90 beats per minute at an elevated rate. So I don't want to tell everyone out there to go ahead and purchase these things because I have not validated them, but I have high hopes, and I will report to the community if, in fact, it does work.
Well, great. Thank you. The blanket really sounded interesting, and even before reading it, I'm like, there's got to be a way to maybe get some kind of inflatable, fill it with water, and lay under it, because I keep hearing about water. So I had that thought going around in my head, and then I saw you sent a blanket, but there was an email going around about your shielding with this blanket, but I didn't realize that the ingredient in there carried so much water, and that was maybe why it was so effective.
Yeah,
Fuck you, Frank.
I'm hoping that
Frank.
Sorry, guys.
About 15%
Papers on the
water.
line. Talking.
But I can't think of any other alternatives. Sure, the other idea I had, but I'm really hesitant to do this, is to buy a ballistic vest outer, so without the actual Kevlar, and then adding, so you can buy clay. Clay has a large amount of water in it. You actually find like freezer packs or freezer sheets that are made with clay, and they hold their shape a little better, and they don't sag to one end. So you can imagine that if you had a piece of clothing that you want to line with water or like a water pack, you typically maybe lean to getting like the gel packs. But if you say Velcro a gel pack to the vest and you put it on, the gel is going to sink to the bottom of the bag. But clay will hold its shape. It will hold its form. And clay also contains a lot of water. So my what I was thinking about doing is, trying to engineer this vest, and if in fact it was effective, maybe going ahead and making a few of these, or giving the plans out to other TIs so they can go ahead and make them. I really don't have the time to start a business on this, nor do I have any intent on profiting from the already from the TI community. So again, once I confirm these tests, whether they work or not, I will disseminate the information accordingly to the community.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I have a couple of questions, and then maybe we can move on to the second segment, if that works for you.
Absolutely. Go ahead. You may hear some background noise. I'm going to go ahead and just grab a drink while you're asking me a question.
Sorry. Okay. Northwest California. Disappeared. Hold on. Hi. You're on the air. A question for Sean?
I do. I have a question. I have a couple. This is Karen. Hi. I can't get on your chat. I'm just on the call. I couldn't get on for some reason. I had a couple questions. What's the gentleman's first name again?
John.
John. Hi, John. I have two questions for you only. Specific questions. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. To what degree are you aware, and to what degree are you aware that micro-Doppler and or phased array radar are being used to not only surveil but to assault people? To what degree are you aware of that?
You said micro-Doppler and the second technology was?
And or phased array, whatever you might call it. I don't know. I've forgotten what verbiage I used with Dr. Duncan, but I asked him if one or the other radar could be used to not only surveil but to assault, and he said yes. So I thought I'd run that by you.
So, Karen, thank you for the question. I'm hesitant, without all of my notes compiled into something that's digestible, I'm hesitant to give you definitive answers. I'm a person who only speaks from fact whenever I can. In terms of micro-Doppler, yes, it can be used as a surveillance tool. Now it's tricky. So my experiments now are trying to determine whether they're using just a very simple pulse frequency or what's called spread spectrum, where you'd say take different increments between, just for the sake of simplicity, between 1 and 10. So you have a frequency of 1, you have a frequency of 10, and you essentially send signals across that entire range of 1 to 10, so there's no single frequency that you can track. And spread spectrum is very, very effective at defeating most measuring techniques. Now, that's what I'm testing right now, which is why I'm not disseminating information. But going back to the micro-Doppler, I'm not familiar with micro part. I can tell you about surveillance technology, which I guess could be called Doppler. So I can tell you that the devices they're using now, they are government frequency allocations that are stated and given for the use of these type of devices. So, we have everything from, your 900 megahertz, your old portable phone or your cell phone, or we have frequencies for microwaves to operate, like a microwave oven at home. Well, the frequency for these surveillance devices are below 840 megahertz, or between 2.9 to about 10.6 gigahertz. Now, that's called the S-band. Now, I have some interesting readings in the lower region, so below 840 megahertz. Again, I don't want to disseminate the specifics without further verification. But these are the two regions where they operate in. The issue here is, although 840 megahertz and below, that's easy to monitor. Your regular counter can pick this up. Your Explorer, your $100 Explorer Discovery spectrum analyzer you can buy, that'll pick it up.
Okay, well, the reason I ask is both times I had guys come over, one was toll season and another was another guy. The very first thing they picked up, which disappeared immediately, was radar. And then Dr. Duncan came forward and said, oh, yeah, they can use radar. They can assault you and surveil you with that. So I just wanted to run that by you and see what you had to say about it. The other question is, I understand they're chasing us around, treating us like the enemy. But my question is, the ultimate end goal, incarceration, and if so, what for? Why?
Well, one, so I firmly believe that at some point, we checked off enough boxes to make us a threat, whether that was you.
I started when I was 3. This started happening to me at age 3.5 that I have memories of and my family remembers. So I was taken over at age 3, so I've been a lifetime member in this club.
So the one, I have two thoughts here. One is that you check off enough boxes where you consider threats or your perceived threat. And the other is experimentation. And I really have to thank Carla Smith for bringing this point about, because I wasn't really focusing on it. But sure, absolutely, there's nothing to say that you haven't been targeted from birth. And what the actual reasons are, I really...
Well, I have a question for you. In 1957, they were developing, according to the urban legend reading I've been doing lately, they were developing a program to make people do things to harm themselves against their own will and with no memory of doing so. And that's exactly what happened to me in 1957 at age 3.5. I remember it because it was outrageous what happened. And so I assumed that that included with a lifetime worth of weird things. Perhaps it was a lifetime program, and it's far more sophisticated than we can even imagine. If that's the case, if it was something back in 1957 that continued. And if what I'm reading is true, they've been had some pretty advanced stuff for quite a long time, I guess.
Yes.
Is that your impression?
I will tell you one thing, and it's something that I'm very, very certain about. And before I say that, I will also say that you don't find many people that believe everything you have to say to the TI, but don't believe this. And what I'm telling you is that I don't believe in mind control. And the reason I say that is because that presumes that you have no ability to control your own thoughts.
Well, actually, I thought there were a couple of technologies, whether they're urban legend or not, but one was thought injection, one was mood manipulation, and the other one was thought erasure. They can make you erase memories.
And I'm here to declare war.
Okay, that's nice. But anyway, the point is that I thought they had those at least 3 abilities, and the mood manipulation through low frequency and the thought injection. I don't know how they do that, but they showed me how they do it. It's pretty seamless. And then the erasure of memory, I've also seen that in other people around me, that one day they knew something and the next day they woke up and they didn't, and they weren't older people. So I've seen the erasure of memory, and I've seen the thought injection, and I've seen the mood management. So I'm wondering if you're aware of those techniques and those tools.
I'm aware of programs that may overlap with that. Now, my series on behavior prediction modification will cover all of the technologies that I know that are in use today. And I will say that one of the most prevalent technologies besides information operations, and we'll just touch on that here in the next segment briefly, is ocular tracking. So there's a program called KSET, K-SET, and that tracks where you're looking at all times. So we see these technologies with autistic kids who need, or like disabled kids that need computer-assisted devices where they, maybe they're immobile and they can't point at things, but they can look at things, and the computer picks up where they're looking and they're able to select certain choices to communicate with people by where they look. Well, these technologies are much more advanced than that. So
yeah.
When people say that they're seeing through my eyes, well, kind of, but not really. And this is much more involved than I'm telling you right now. But what I'm saying is that everywhere you look, whether or not you have glasses or not, your eyes are one of the most important things that they focus on. And there's very, very specialized software. And you think your 15 megapixel camera is good. You should see what they have. It tracks your eyes, and whatever you see is, if you know what someone's every input is, you can guess fairly accurately what they're going to do, how they're going to respond. If they focus on something, you can use that and leverage it as harassment. We can get more in this later into when I have my if you guys allow me to have a discussion on behavior prediction modification. But it's fascinating, because if you remember when I mentioned the different stages, the different phases of unconventional warfare, the big one is the very first one. That's the preparation, and you're being watched for many, many, many years. And everything about you is being held up. Your every word, your posture, whether you're sweating, the tone of your voice, everything gets put into a database. Right? Now, what if I'm able to Google, if you will, into your database, the Karen database, the last time you had a little bit of sweat over your eyebrow, you said a certain word or statement, and maybe scratch your arm. What was your thought, or what was said at that point? Chances are, if I type in those things, or this is done automatically, that the computer can speculate what you're thinking, because it already knows what your memories are.
I understand predictive computing, but I have a question. Are you familiar with radio hypnotic intracerebral
Bitch,
control?
why don't you fucking speak up? Why don't you squeal like a little pig
I'm
on
sorry.
the show?
I'm sorry. All right. I didn't mean to not speak up. Let me speak up here. Are you familiar with radio hypnotic intracerebral control? RHIC? And EDM, electronic dissolution of memory?
Not specifically, Karen, but I would be interested in maybe chatting with you offline, maybe learning from what you know, and maybe following up.
Pardon me?
I would be interested in maybe having a conversation with you offline, because I'm not familiar with them off the top of my head. I mean, I may know them by different names, but I'm not educated enough to really comment on it right now.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks, Karen. And you guys, as you know, there's nobody else open. They're coming in the back door. There are hackers that come in and do these things and say the things or play tapes. So I'm doing my best. I can only control what is in front of me, so I do apologize. We'll just ignore them, and just, when you have a bully, ignore them. So that's what we'll do, and we'll carry on. Okay, thanks, Karen.
Welcome.
Okay, we'll take one more question, and then we will go to the next segment. So, hi, South Carolina. You have a question for Sean?
Yes. About the projecting what you're looking at. I notice with me there are blue beams. I'll see a blue beam every now and again, and sometimes it feels like it's shining directly in my eyes. Sometimes it feels like it's projecting through my eyes. I don't know if that has anything to do with what you just explained a few minutes ago.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
I don't give my name out.
Okay, can I call you Jane?
Well, I'm South Carolina. You can just say South.
We'll call her South Carolina.
South Carolina. What is your thought process, or have you ever expressed any thought as a result of seeing, after seeing this blue beam?
No, not really. I mean, it's usually, I pay attention to it. I don't know if it's happening throughout the whole day, but I notice when I'm driving in particular, that's when I see it. It's like if I'm in a focused state of mind, if I'm focusing, like I'm focusing on the road or, deep in thought or something about anything, then I see the blue beam. It's like a little tiny beam. And when I look straight ahead, it's like it projects as a blue dot in front of me.
So there are various, I guess they're called non-lethal weapons that are called dazzlers. So essentially small lasers meant to disorient you, distract you. And typically you see these used when you're trying to focus in on something or do something productive, something to better your life, something where you're learning. And although I have no personal experience with these, more that other TRs are being are being hit by them. Now, I will say that the various eye tracking technologies that I know of don't use, say, a laser to monitor where your eyes are looking. They don't have to, and besides, that'd be very damaging to your retinas. So I can't draw a correlation between those two other than just to say that it's most likely just meant to distract you or disorient you. And if you're getting it while you're driving, well, we can all speculate as to what a distraction or maybe a temporary blindness might do. So,
well, would you have any kind of speculation as to where the beam is coming from, the original location of the beam, or what's projecting the beam?
So I can tell you that these devices can be handheld, very small. I will tell you that they have automated targeting systems, so systems that will either know the front. So your car could be tagged and sort of monitored by radio frequency, but they can also just recognize images. So let's say that you're driving your car. Well, it knows what your car looks like, so it locks into the outline of your car and knows where you should be sitting. It then looks at the profile of where you should be sitting and then locks onto your face. And once it locks onto your face, it already knows what the profile of your face is, and then locks onto your eyes. And then it shoots the laser, and it will sort of follow you along as you're driving without sort of moving away from the area where it's targeting for 1 second or even half a second. Where's it coming from? Well, if we knew that, we'd have a lot of answers. The name of the game here is being covert and being deceptive. And this next talk I'm going to have here will explain all about deception. So I can't tell you where it's coming from. Just like I can't tell you exactly which perp is hitting you with a do. Is it the house next to me? It could be the three houses I suspect, or it could be neither of those three houses. Deception is the name of the game here.
Well, I appreciate that response. I have one more question, if I can ask.
Sure.
It feels like that I'm like within a force field of some sort. That's what it feels like as I go out throughout the day. And I also notice that my voice is augmented at a high volume in my car, in my house, everywhere I go. It seems like I'm speaking into a microphone all of a sudden. Do you know what's causing that? Even on this phone, it's like I'm speaking into a very loud microphone or something.
But I know what you're talking about. I know the feeling. I've been hit by it, and it's still something I'm experimenting in sort of detection. So when you get hit by, let's say, a blast of electromagnetic energy, right? It is stunning to your nerves, to your auditory receptors, and so stunning that they shut down. right? There's no more transmission of sound to your brain. It's just overloaded. But once that comes back, once your nerves start to reset and go back to the equilibrium, whatever you hear next is very, very cute, or perhaps maybe ill-defined, where you might hear like a doubling, like an echo, and so forth.
Yeah.
So if I had to speculate, it's that, and again, I know exactly the feelings you're talking about, South Carolina, but it is that you're being hit by a certain EMF frequency that is inducing this effect. And I can even tell you what frequency I suspect it is, but I don't want to feed the community false information. So if you tune in, I will discuss it, I think, at another time with possible ways to protect yourself.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you. So I guess we'll go into part 2 of our conversation here, and then just save your questions if we didn't get to you, and we will get to you whenever he's done with the second segment.
Okay. Let's see. Just bear with me for a moment. Just get my bearings. Okay. Now this is going to be. This tends to be. I cut out so much information from this presentation. It tends to be very wordy, but it's very, very important. So everyone wants to learn about the weapons, and that's important to understand. But my message here is that the most powerful weapon that they have for the targeted individual program is deception. So what is deception? Deception is a set of actions designed to deliberately mislead a target into actions or inactions prejudicial to the target's interests by manipulating the target's decision-making process through the communication of true, manipulated, distorted, or falsified information. So deception is subdivided into 2 broad categories. We have active deception, and we have cover. Active deception consists of those actions designed to convey deceptive indicators, so that's fed information, to the target, whereas cover is a set of actions designed to prevent the target access to the indicators necessary for constructing a correct perception of the situation and environment, and thus necessary for proper decision making. So this is being maintained in your bubble. When you go anywhere, you're in a bubble. There are people that are going to follow you around, whether it's in your vehicle. They're going to preempt you by going into stores that you're nearby, and so forth. So you're fed very selective information, right? Your indicators are pre-selected, and you have no control over it. And you can only make those decisions based on what you see and observe. So I should also say that the obscuring of indicators is also an intrinsic part of deceiving a target. So blocking out the normal, but you remember as being normal, that's very important to them too. I also like to say that deception is always successful. And at the very basic, even if you don't believe it, even if you can look past it, it was successful for them in that you even thought about it, or gave it a thought, or had to analyze it and take away from your resources. And that can just be your time, your energy to just mull that situation over, and or whatever it may be. So there are many definitions of deception that can be confused with a lie. However, the confusion is incorrect, as deception and lies are not the same. So one definition defines a lie as occurring when a person asserts to a second person a proposition that the first person knows to either be false or not true, with the intent of causing the second person to have a justified belief in that proposition. But since a deception can contain truth, right, an actual training exercise used as part of a deception is still a true event, right? If I'm sitting next to you and I'm observing what you're observing, and if I pull up to a traffic light, if I'm in the car with you and I pull up to a traffic light and I see 7 red cars in front of me at the traffic light, that's my truth as well, right? So deception can contain truth. So it then becomes immediately apparent that deception and lies are not equal. However, this still leaves the proposition that lies are a subset of deception. And I'm sure that was confusing, but trying my best here. So the definition of deception that I'm using here requires injury to the target or advantage for the practitioner. So this leaves lies undertaken without the intent of injury or advantage, white lies if you will, to exist outside of the sphere of deception. Very, very important also to point out that judicious use of the truth can be far more supportive of deception than outright falsehood. So when we get a lot of street theater, we hear a lot of things that are true. Now, you're told these things selectively. Perhaps, for instance, I think fairly quickly on my feed, I'm able to give a pitch with very little preparation, specifically when it comes to my area of science. You can judge me for this seminar as you wish. This is not my expertise, but there's some overlap.
I can say it for myself, and I'm sure everyone else is just grateful that you're here, and we appreciate all your information and your expertise.
So thank you, Ella. That's really kind. So what, after giving a very quick speech to one of our sponsors, unexpectedly, I walk out to my next meeting, and 2 perps walk up, and they're having a conversation. And one says, "Seat," and the other one says, "Yeah, but he's a jerk." So, the deception in itself can contain truth, and that sometimes can hurt. It's like they bring you up and they bring you down, and sometimes that's just worse than just bringing you down. So moving forward, there are many different. So we have deception and the 2 components: active deception and cover, and they break down into a lot more categories. So we're going to go through some of these, and I hope that you guys can relate to each of these and see these in your own lives. So let's talk about active deception. So active deception is comprised of actions which convey deceptive information to the target, also referred to as simulation or showing the false. Active deception is divided into 4 broad categories: displays, feints, demonstrations, and disinformation. Cover, the other category, is a set of actions designed to prevent the target access to the indicators necessary for constructing a correct perception of the situation and environment, and thus necessary for proper decision making. Now let's go to displays. Displays are static depictions of activities, forces, or equipment for the purpose of deceiving the target's collection apparatus. Now you can see the collection. You can imagine the collection apparatus being your meter, or a camera, or perhaps a booby trap. Displays can occur as well as in the electromagnetic spectrum. Displays are divided into 2 categories: simulation and portrayal. Simulations use decoys and other devices to create a dummy force or capability, whereas decoys are models or dummies used to replicate actual equipment, buildings, and personnel. Feints. That's F-E-I-N-T-S. Feints are operations designed to deceive the target into reacting as if the feint is an actual decisive operation. Feints differ from demonstrations in that some manner of contact is sought with a TI, is sought with a target. The degree of contact can vary significantly. So feints are used for several purposes. For example, to distract the target from the actual decisive action, right? Facilitating relative superiority at the point of decision, luring the target into exposing tactical positions. So let's say that you're presented with something that scares you. Let's say you're a survivalist and you have a tractor trailer burning in your backyard full of supplies that will keep you alive for a year. Let's say they didn't know about that. And you retreat to your underground bunker. Well, you just exposed your tactical position. Tactical positions could be that camera that you have that they didn't know about that you carry around, right? So they present you with a situation and you pull it out and now they know about your camera, so they're ready for it next time. That's exposing your tactical position. Or they can trick the target into prematurely committing the reserve. So this is tricking you into spending money, for instance. And we all know that that's one of the goals of the programs. Then we have demonstrations. So demonstrations are deceptive shows of force or actual engagement with a target is not sought. Because contact is not sought with a target, the forces used for a demonstration can be considerably smaller than those used for a feint. Demonstrations include training events and exercises well away from the target. For example, a demonstration of an airborne exercise includes, say, a Black Hawk helicopter just removed from the target can be used to create the perception of a pending airborne assault. And we often see, when we go out there and we try to photograph these small Cessnas, we often see that they slightly retreat and fly in your vicinity so you can't capture them. That would be an example of a demonstration. Disinformation. So this feeds into information operations, and this is a whole different talk. But very briefly, disinformation is exposure of the target's collection assets, false, modified, or selectively true information with the intent to deceive. So you're shown something to make you believe the false. Disinformation has no set form or design. Any communication from a presidential proclamation to a scrap of paper left in a wastebasket can be used to convey disinformation. Information also includes the flooding of the information environment with the purpose of overloading the target systems. If you have too much information, it's difficult to make a decision. So deceptions of this type are similar to the jamming denial type, but different in that disinformation flooding contains deceptive indicators intended to mislead the target, whereas the jamming of a radio, for instance, with static does not. Then we have camouflage. I'm going to cover some of these next ones a little quickly here. Camouflage seeks to prevent indicators from being detected by the target's collection assets. Within camouflage, there are four broad methods. So you can have hiding, you can have blending, disguising, and securing. In hiding, the item is concealed by a physical barrier, such as a home, a vehicle, a trailer, electrical poles, netting. The physical barrier itself may be visible or blended into the background in a disguise. In blending, the item is concealed by means that merge the item with the background. And this can be accomplished in the field through the application of paint or natural materials. In disguising, the item is concealed by making it look like something innocuous, such as a radar imaging system disguised as an air conditioning unit. In securing, indicators are reduced via the use of operations security, information security, and information control. So this leads into covert operations, which opens up a whole different discussion. Let's go to denial. So whereas camouflage focuses on masking indicators, denial attacks the channel indicators that travel onto the target. So denial seeks to degrade the target's collection channel so that the adversary is not able to receive indicators that herd it into a smaller set of channels. So here they're trying to deny you from getting the full picture. They're trying to limit what information that comes to you. And then we move to some alternate branches of deception. So we have commission and omission. So there's a theory called, by Chisholm and Feehan, called the intent to deceive. And this thought delineates 8 types of deception divided into 2 categories. So deceptions by commission are typified by the deceiver contributing casually to the belief of the target. This is when your false narrative is being propagated. This is when you are given, say, additional information to believe that you tapped into the hive minds of someone. Deceptions are typified by the deceiver facilitating the target's maintenance of an existing belief. So let's go through some examples here. So deception by commission. So the deceiver contributes casually to the target acquiring belief in the proposition, or the deceiver contributes casually to the target continuing to believe in that proposition. Also, stopping belief in the negation of the proposition. So if someone's trying to tell you the truth, or there's some truthful channel, they will try to block that so that you don't get the opposite story and you continue to believe what you observe. And finally, the target not acquiring belief in the negation of the proposition. Now, the deception by omission is just the inverse of that. But you guys, I hope I made that clear, so it was understood. It's hard to narrate. So we can also have different levels of sophistication, and you know, we see these by very elaborate, say, setups that are made against us. I can give you an example where, you know, I had a lot of tailgaters on me, and there's one good way to get rid of the tailgater, and that is to very unexpectedly slam on the brakes without causing lockup, without losing control, and justifying it by perhaps claiming that you saw an animal crossing the road. Now, you have to understand that this is a very risky procedure, and people can get hurt. So, but if you do choose to do this, and I do not advocate any violence by any means, and I never will, it will buy you space. Vehicles will not tailgate you anymore. However, you should expect retaliation, and that retaliation can take many different levels of sophistication. So, my personal example, that can be then the very next day, after, say, a brake check, you know, where you slam on the brakes, having 3 cars in front of you suddenly brake in unity. So, you know, if you're looking ahead, you're looking at the car in front of you. You have no way of knowing that all 3 cars are going to stop suddenly. There's nothing for you to suspect that. But this was done in order for me to rear end the vehicle. This is done as retaliation. When I continue to do it, because they continue to tailgate, the next day there was an entourage of vehicles on a 2-lane road, and I just happened to notice that one of them was an undercover officer. And behind me, in my lane, there were no vehicles. So about 6 vehicles in the left lane, I'm in the right lane, no vehicles behind me. And all of a sudden, this red Ford Ranger pulls up really close behind me. And that's a sophisticated form of deception, right? Where you're trying to be deceived into brake checking this vehicle, slamming on the brakes, and causing this accident by direct observation, well, under the direct observation of an officer and a bunch of other witnesses. Clearly, I recognized the situation, and I very, very slowly and cautiously signaled and pulled over to the shoulder. You can see the disappointment in the entourage's faces, but you see the different levels. I hope that describes different levels of sophistication deception can take. So we can also have effects-based forms of deception. Let's see. We can have uncertainty. So uncertainty is an unavoidable aspect of these operations. Despite the desires of every commander, a perfect understanding of the situation is impossible. Among the phenomena creating uncertainty are inadequacy of collection channels, infiltration of noise, corruption, and the fundamental inability to read the opponent's mind. The compounded result of these phenomena is an obscuration of the situation, almost as if a fog had settled over the field. We have an A-type deception, and these seek to increase the ambiguity of the situation so the target becomes unsure as to what to believe. And we have M-type deceptions as well. And these reduce the ambiguity by building up the attractiveness of one wrong alternative. So why do we use deception? Well, deception is not undertaken for the sake of itself. Deception is conducted to drive the behavior of the target to achieve some benefit for the practitioner or some deleterious effect for the target. 4 reasons are typically given for the use of deception, and those are to achieve surprise, to gain freedom of action, to save lives, and to mislead the target. In addition to these reasons, there are 4 other reasons for attempting deception, and those are to secure superiority at the point of decision, security, subversion, and finally, mental isolation. Let's talk about misleading the target. This is where you trick the opponent into misapplying strengths or revealing weaknesses. So a positive reaction by a target to deception. These can be, say, the movement of reserves and their premature commitment to erroneous positions, being prompted to set up a camera in an area where operations will not take place. Engagement by the enemy in activities which exhaust his resources or prohibits their use elsewhere. You can have disclosure of positions. So if you have a safe room that you go to avoid DO attacks, that could be an example. And we can have negative reactions by the target, which are a failure to remove their reserves to meet the intended offensive. So we can have a failure to exploit weaknesses, a failure of counterattack where the target doesn't engage, a failure to disengage. So let's say that you decide to follow one of the perps home. That would be a negative reaction. And then failure to locate and act against true positions of reserves or dumps. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just skip a few of these as we can end here shortly, but let's just go to mental isolation. So mental isolation occurs when the target is unable to perceive or make sense of the situation. This is the key of the program. The ultimate goal of mental isolation is to reduce the target to passivity or paralysis as the target is unable to appreciate or cope with the practitioner's actions. Deception in support of mental isolation seeks to create an impenetrable fog of war through camouflage and denial, while increasing uncertainty and ambiguity by the presentation of conflicting information through what channels the target retains access to. The effective mental isolation and subsequent paralysis of a target can negate the target's fighting power and thus ability to resist. Now, we talked about indicators, and indicators are, so, there are indicators and there are channels. So you go into the grocery shop, and they know that you go to your Wegmans, your Rite Aid. You might want to go to Trader Joe's, and they have people stationed at each of these supermarkets in anticipation of your visit to harass you, to provide you with some street theater. But they don't know which one you're going to. But they have people at all these locations, and you send out all of these indicators through these various channels. But the target, the TI, is only going to be exposed to one. They're only going to Trader Joe's. So there's an understanding that the target is not going to see all of it. It's also important to understand that there are a lot of resources being committed to you. At least in my case, we're talking thousands of people a day, especially when I travel. It's also meant to make you think that it's everyone, it's the entire town. And I will just say this, that I've broken the perimeter. So I mentioned that we travel in this bubble, and I'm sure you guys know what I mean. Well, the bubble, the safety mechanisms in these bubbles are such that they expect you to follow the law. They expect you not to run red lights and pop curbs and go across fields and sort of break the law. When you do so, and you break the bubble, you get past the barrage of cars and so forth, I can tell you that there's a very normal world out there. I don't recommend doing it because it's fairly dangerous, not only to yourself, but you can possibly injure someone else. But I thought I would share that there's hope, right? It's not everyone. And, you may often see this if you go to a new location where you haven't frequented before, and, you actually get normal service and the person doesn't make the facial gestures. Shortly thereafter, someone would come in, a purple come in and start the harassment, but it's nice to know that it's not everyone. So examples of channels are intelligence. So you can have human, signal, imagery, measures, electronic. You can have media in form of newspapers, radio, television, internet. You can have word of mouth, surveys, telephone, and so forth. Now, each thing you're presented with is very, very calculated. So they observe you, they orient, they decide, and then they act. That's the process they go through to frame all these various deceptions. And they do so with certain tools. So they use small numbers bias. So this is also known as representativeness, is the tendency to overestimate the reliability of a small sample to represent the total set. So you see all the perps around you and everywhere you go. So you start to think it's the entire town. You see 3 cop cars along your route in the morning, and you sort of think the entire police force is in on that and against you. That's small numbers bias. And then, this is one of my favorites, anchoring heuristic. So anchoring heuristic also impacts how an individual adjusts to an existing perception based on new information. So there's a tendency for the starting perception to act as friction on any adjustment, so that adjusted perception may be closer to the starting position than appropriate. That's a lot of words. What this means is that if you're walking down a path, and you take this path every day, it's your path to work or to the laundromat, whatever it may be, and on this path, someone, you're approaching a blind corner, someone walks out and interrupts your walkway, or a loud horn blows as you're approaching a certain point. The next time that you approach that intersection, that point in that walk to do the same thing, you're going to be thinking about that point, and you're going to be anxious. And they only have to do it once. But the point is to keep you on edge. And this is what's called anchoring. Anchoring can also be the color harassment. We usually, when they introduce a new color, you see it very, very quickly, and you may even have some interaction, some negative interaction with a person. And this is what anchors the color, and then you associate the color with a negative event. Finally, we have confirmation. Oh, actually, second to last, we have confirmation bias. So it exhibits itself to interpret new information in ways supportive to the person's established perceptions. So your false beliefs are confirmed, or you get sort of corroboratory indicators to make you believe in the false narrative. And then we have Rubicon bias, which is the tendency of individuals to place greater confidence in a decision once the decision is made. We as CIs have to be flexible in the way that we think. Our first conclusion is not always the correct one, and I speak from experience. I have been wrong, and I continue to be wrong, and I continue to learn as I move through this program. So, wrapping up here. Let's see. There are a lot of characteristics that are taken sort of in consideration when framing these deceptions, from the target's plans, capabilities, their intelligence, their preconceptions, their cultural biases, their disposition, say, for violence or for aggression, and so forth. These all have to be considered. And generally, they use what's called a see, think, do methodology. So when they're devising these deceptions, they think to themselves, what do you have to see to have a certain thought and then perform a certain action? And then we have termination. So we talked about termination briefly in the prior section, but at some point, a deception operation will lose its utility. Therefore, deception operations need to have a plan for termination of the deception. So the termination plan should detail the steps taken to dismantle the deception. For example, the release of field personnel from a feint or demonstration and cessation of the portrayal of, say, radio traffic. So this can take many different forms. This could be you going outside to go read a book on your porch or your deck, whatever, and the noise campaign starts. And you're there and you continue to read your book, and you ignore the horns that go off in distance, the car alarms, you ignore the neighbor banging and who knows what, hammering nails inside of his house or whatever the hell he's doing, and you just continue to read your book. Well, eventually, they stop because they realize it's not working, and there is a termination plan in the books for them. So one of the best advice that I can give you guys, I guess, is keep doing what you love. Just battle through it, because if you're persistent, they do terminate. And let's see, we need to come to an end here. So I'm going to skip ahead. Again, deception is very, very complicated, and that's why it's so effective. It's more effective than any do that they could use on you. And let's talk about some deception failures before we end here. So what are some deception failures? There are 11 reasons why deception can fail. So it can be detected by the victim. It can be incomplete or incorrect understanding of the target's intelligent apparatus. So if you don't know the TI's capabilities, it may be an effective situation to effectively target him. You can use the improper channels. Maybe the deception story falls outside of the deception window. You can have an unreasonable results, or you can just have bad luck, and there are several others here. And finally, I'll conclude by saying that, again, deception always works. It is always effective, and it is cheap. And that is why it is so used within this program, and it is used to pull us all apart, take us off message, and believe these narratives that aren't true and divide us. It's used to perpetuate propaganda and make us ineffective. So with that, I conclude, and I'm sorry for the lengthiness of this chat, but Yeah, Bella, if you have any questions, I'll certainly take them. So I hand it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. It was a very detailed, report, and you really gathered some great information together, and we really appreciate you for sharing it with us. And let me get over to my board. I'll take her.
I'm going to step away for about 30 seconds. Is that okay?
That's fine. Please do.
All right. Thank you.
And I'll make sure that people are actually still waiting on the call here with their hand up. And give me a second, guys. So, Linda. Hi, Linda.
Thank you, Bella. Sean, are you back?
Probably not back yet.
What a nice man, and what an intelligent, my goodness.
Yeah, very intelligent and very, very nice. I agree with you.
I wanted to tell him that he doesn't need to apologize to us for not knowing everything, because nobody knows everything,
Yep, exactly.
Bless his heart. He sure knows a lot. Boy, do we appreciate that information.
It's a little hard to hear you. I don't know if it's on my end or if it's your phone.
Oh, it's because my my speaker thing was on my head. Above, way up on the top of my head. It just was, nothing was coming through, huh? Oddly enough, I speak out of the front of my face, not the top of my head. Now I can tell. Anyway.
I thought it was my phone. I'm like, it must be something going on with my, with my...
No, it's not you. No, it's not you. It's my, headband thing, or my head thing was...
Right.
Not in front of my mouth. And when he gets back, I do have a question. I have two questions. I wasn't sure of one thing he said, and which is, if we persist in ignoring them, does that mean they will cease and desist at some point? Do they tend to, is there a time they will leave us alone? It sounds like that's... Hello. Hi there, Sean. How are you?
Good. So I jumped in a little late. I may have missed your name.
Yes, you did. I'm sure you did. Thank you so much for the information you're providing. You mentioned at one point, well, you weren't quite sure of everything. Sean, we've come to know that nobody knows everything, but boy, have you shared a lot of really pertinent, great information, and thank you for that. Really, that's what you've done is very helpful for us. Appreciate it. That's one thing. Another thing, what I want to know, Sean, is you said you walk around, you have something affixed to your belt or your waist. What is that? I guess that was some kind of shielding. I'll go back and see if I can find my notes. Do you remember saying that? Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, so I walk around with ECG. So
I don't know what that is.
Cardiogram. So essentially, it monitors your heart rate. So
because they go after your heart, don't they?
Right. So I'm effectively able to pick up the induced atrial arrhythmias and so forth, and log them and catalog them for the future. And I'm also walk around with the blood pressure cuff as well to regulate my blood pressure.
My blood pressure shot up right after I started getting electronically or getting hit by the frequencies. My blood pressure went up. All of a sudden, I'd always had 110 over 70, and then all of a sudden, wham! I was 180 over 90, and it all came right after I started getting hit. What else did I? Oh, did you say that if when they're trying to upset us and the car alarm goes off and then this happens and that happens, and they do love to do that. It's like one thing right after the other after the other. Did you say that if we ignore them, that tends to cause them to sort of stop?
Yes, it does
cool.
take some time. It does take some time, and it could be just a matter of hours. It can be 3 weeks, but I assure you.
Right. Yeah.
So, we have, like I said, for me, I'm at the point where it's a game of chess, and there's narratives going back and forth when, when I figure something out, they tend to bring out like smart cars. So I see like 3 or 4 smart cars, or I see a truck parked outside my house, with a company called Swift on it. So it turns out that these strategies are very effective because they need your reaction. They need you to look at the perp wearing the color. They need you to be distracted and break your focus. But if you don't do that, if you don't give feedback, then these things aren't effective. And let me just follow this up really quickly with everything that they do has a sheet associated with it where it has the action, what's involved, and your reaction, and there's a rating of effectiveness on various different levels where they put in on a scale of 1 to 10 what their perceived reaction was. And I had this sheet, and at some point I have to share it with you in another discussion. But if you have no reaction, it's ineffective, and they move on. That's what I'm saying.
What if you laugh? It's gotten to the point where I'll come home and I'll realize they've been in the house because something's been moved or whatever, and it's been going on for so long. It's almost kind of humorous. I mean, it's like, really? Are we back to that one? Really? I mean, I don't have I don't have an angry reaction or a fear reaction. It's sort of like, oh man, just bored reaction. Is that even? Should we not do that either? Just flat out ignore it. Ignore whatever they're doing?
You have to have a little fun with it too, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got to laugh at something. Yeah, and they're pretty ridiculous.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I try my best not to give feedback, but sometimes I give very strategic feedback. And let's say that I can also implement my own deception and my own obfuscation and so forth. But I would suggest for new tactics, especially for the ones that bother you the most, stand your ground, endure, and do not react. And if you want to if the ones that say don't bother you at all, give a reaction, right?
Give what?
Give a reaction. You want them to keep using that because it bothers you the least.
Oh,
so
okay.
Every so often, throw out like flinch, when you hear that horn, or like run inside, if you're reading a book outside on your deck. Sort of screw with their system, if you will.
Screw with their system. I like it. Well, one thing I do regularly, and I just can't help myself. I see a lot of cars with one headlight coming at me, and that seems to be a fairly common experience for us, that they like to let us know that they're there, and there's one headlight, and I've taken to just kind of flipping them off because I just have to. I may stop doing that because it's kind of my way of saying in your ear, but it might be a little too reactive, Maybe I'll just stop reacting to that.
So my take on this, and if that's a stress reliever for you, if that feels good to you, then go ahead.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, just kind of like, oh, please, is my reaction to it.
But understand, I just want you to understand that there's some negative narrative spread about you, and these people are expecting you to act negatively. Yeah. So the more normal that you look, the more that you don't even acknowledge them, the more defeated, perhaps the more they start to question whatever that narrative they've been told. So your best bet is to avoid eye contact. We all have peripheral vision. You can all, from a distance, make out who's who, but as they approach, just don't make any eye contact. It's fantastic. It makes my day to see a perp walk by me with me having no acknowledgement towards them, and they're turning their head as I'm walking by them, staring at me like what the hell? Like, you're supposed to react to this. That makes my day. So
yeah.
At the same time, you have to fight the narrative. You have to appear normal. So having flicking them off, again, it makes you feel good. By all means, go for it. It's not the way I approach things, though.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing all that information.
Sure.
Really helps us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Linda. And you know what? I like your tactic.
You like my what?
Better.
You like my reaction?
I like your tactic. I'm not condoning it, but for me and for you, It works. I like that.
It works.
Too.
I feel better. It's more. It's really like, oh, please, just in your ear, Bubba. The people driving by. We just don't need it's nonsense. But I probably, in a way, should stop reacting because then maybe they'll stop with the one. I don't know. I just know that I think the best thing. I generally don't react, or I don't react very much. Sometimes I whip out my camera and take a picture, and I suppose that's a reaction. But I don't know. Anyway, thanks, Elle. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Linda.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we'll go down to the next person. Central Massachusetts. Hi, you're on the air. You have a question for Sean? Central Massachusetts. Give them a second to unmute their phone, or maybe they fell asleep. I don't know. We'll move on to the next person. We'll come back to you, Massachusetts. Hey, Maya. Hi, Maya.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Okay. Sean, that was like a brilliant display of information. I missed the first part, but this last hour was very well organized. I'm curious about your sources, but I'm sure that can come another time. And I totally agree with you, all the layers of deception and how people get, the anchoring and stuff comes from NLP. They're expecting people to be suggestible, and they build on that. And I appreciate you, sharing all of that. I really do. And my question is kind of like what Linda was asking regarding when, let's say you don't play the game, because it is a game in hybrid game theory. You don't react to certain aspects, so they divert it or they reorganize their game against you. So then, you got to reorganize your reactions. First you have to analyze, what are the layers of deception here and what part of this is truth, So really I have two questions. So at what point do they decide that this TI is not playing anymore? And say, is it possible, there's a few cases in our community where they just released the TI from the, heavy-duty targeting. Of course, they'll probably still be R&M'd. They'll still be, followed and surveilled, but they're not getting attacks. I'm wondering, what is the turning point for those people when it gets to the point where, okay, this is, I'm going to be under surveillance the rest of my life, but it's not going to interfere so much, So what's the turning point? What's the key to that happening? And then I'll go on with the next statement that I have.
Thanks, Maya. So answering your first question, my sources come from all of the various military academies, like the U.S. Air Force Academy. So their students publish, the officers, they publish theses, dissertations when they graduate. And some of these are classified, some of them are not. And a lot of these go unread. So it turns out that a lot of this information that we see, we associate with top secret programs or compartmentalized programs or special access programs. They're out in the public domain. You just have to know how to find them. And the discussion in these theses can be very revealing. The other source I have is various declassified military manuals, whether that's from the Army, the Navy, or even joint operations. The Federal Association, the Federation of Associated Scientists has done great work to declassify many of these manuals, and they are one of my primary sources of information. Now, as far as my understanding of your second question, Maya, was at one point do they realize that you're not playing anymore, and that you are going on the offensive? And at what point do you change your attitude to have perhaps the courage to go on that offensive? Is that correct?
Well, no, actually, I didn't bring up the subject of offense because that I feel that goes into the category of reactions. But no, the part about, let's say you ignore, you're unmoved by the game playing and tactics. You're unmoved. It doesn't do anything. You're bored with it. No, there are a couple of TIs in our community who were, for some reason, given permission to leave the arena. Just to, like they'll still be under surveillance, but they're not being attacked overtly. Now, what's the turning point for a person like that? How can we reach that?
Well, I've only so I've only read about this. You read about people who were TIs that were involved, and then you never hear about them again. They're alive, but they stop responding to your emails, and all your messages, and your friends may contact them. They stop responding. They're still there, but they just stop getting involved. And you start to wonder, did they find a way? But that way clearly involves their silence. That's one possibility. You get lucky. You have the means, or someone of influence who maybe can save you. There are various target lists, and targets are prioritized. So it could be possible that you're moved from a high priority list to a medium priority list, where they don't have to devote the assets to you. You're still going to be watched for the rest of your life.
Yeah. But you maybe move down on the priority list if you appear not to have a threat, or you are such a threat that they back off.
Yeah, so America is not really known for backing off. I mean, you have some examples like Vietnam.
I'm thinking of somebody. Dwight has spoken very openly on our calls over the last several months, saying he's not getting much of any of it anymore, even though he does feel a little vibration. He attributes the lack of targeting to his earthing techniques or grounding techniques. But I ground, a lot of us ground, and we're still, So Dwight is an example. There's a couple others who aren't as vocal. But he's clearly stated that his targeting is all but stopped. And, but anyway, in my case, the psychological game playing it's ongoing, but I don't react the way other TIs do because of my psychological background, my training in counseling. I sit as an observer most of the time, analyzing their tactics and not reacting. But what it does is then it pushes them over to assaulting me physically to get a reaction, really bad physical attacks sometimes. The mental stuff is just sort of game playing for me that doesn't even, it's not that challenging actually. Yeah. But I'd love to step out and see, how, if we could find, and maybe this will come as part of your research in the future, is what is the key point, the turning point when this program backs off of us and starts doing something different, Okay, well, and you don't have to answer that now. I think you've already tried to, so we'll probably come to that in the next few months. But the bottom line that I wanted to share with everybody is keep your center and keep your, what I call radar for the truth. Because if you have radar for the truth, you can cut through all the layers of camouflage and disinformation, everything. If you really stay true to what you know, and you can, scan a situation, you'll get really good at it, and you won't have to analyze so much what what they're trying to do to you. That's all. I just wanted to share that part.
So just very briefly before we move on, so exposure, right? If you're the Ella of our community, I would presume that the attacks might diminish in their intensity. If you make it to the status of, say, like a Bill Binney or Weeby, your targeting might diminish or stop because now you're in the spotlight. People are watching, and they have very strict rules when it comes to targeting people with high visibility because there's a chance of them being exposed. The other way that the program can change is if you become passive, right? You essentially meet the objective of learned helplessness, and this can take many forms, right? You're homeless on the street. You're on drugs and you become a fiend, and you sort of lose everything around you, or maybe you get incarcerated. And then the other one, I don't want to. This one I don't really want to discuss because I don't want to seed this idea to the community, but it's worth thinking about, and it's ask yourself, who are the perps in this room? They hear both sides of the story. So why do they do what they do? So
we do that a lot. We analyze that a lot here.
Yeah, this is the one that I talked to another TI here regularly. His name is Paul. He's from Massachusetts, but it's one we were discussing recently about. And you have to wonder because the perps in this room presumably hear our agony, hear the victimization, and they continue to arrest. And we know that in this program, people are segmented and compartmentalized. They don't get a full story, but they come into this room and you're listening, and you get a pretty good picture of what's going on. But yet you would persist in your ways. So perhaps joining the dark side is a way out, a way to diminish. Now,
oh, no. Well, I'm not going there. I think some other people would agree with me. That's not worth it. And, the total passivity, or the helplessness feature, I don't think that stops the targeting because in my case, I'm saying, what I've observed, not only in myself but others, is that if you become passive or helpless, then you don't have any way to protect yourself. And then they usually hammer you really hard if you're in that, like if you don't have any protection, and if you're down, you're homeless or something, those people get hit really, really hard from what I've heard on these calls.
I'd also say that if you make it to that state, what do you have to live for? You have to get up every day.
Yeah.
And think to yourself what you're fighting for, whether that's for your own life, whether that's your children, for whether that's the community. And sort of, at least for me, this is what keeps me going. Some sense of normalcy for my relationships, for my family, for you guys. So that will never be an option for me. From my cold dead hands, I will fight for you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I will let somebody else have some questions, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to come up to Northwest California.
Hi, Ella. It's Dawn.
Hi, Dawn. How are you?
I'm doing okay, hanging in there.
That's good. Hanging in there is good.
Right. So I just wanted to share a couple things real quick. First of all, on the water thing, just before I forget, those red hot water or cold water bottles. They're probably about a foot long and maybe like 10 inches wide, the old-fashioned ones. They're rubber, and you can fill them full of water. So I bought a bunch of those before, and I tried putting the water in those. I don't know, you could probably like hang them around your neck or something. It was just a thought because I bought them. So that worked kind of good at one point in time for me until they changed up. The other thing I wanted to say on the topic you're talking about right now is when I first got involved in this, I was looking for things online to try to help for shielding. And one of the first things that I saw was, I don't know, you guys probably know more about it than me, it was called Orgone. And so I got into a conversation with the guy who was selling them, and he told me that he had completely freed himself from all of it because, he said, because I send them love. That's all I do every day, he said. He has his crystals, he has his Orgone all around his house, and every day he just sends them love. He sends them love. And so I was thinking about it, and I was going, well, okay, I understand that, and that's a really great philosophy. But I think, moreover, the more important point is what you were saying, Sean, is that he wasn't reacting negatively at all to anything that they did. Everything that happened, he just loved them. And that's what he told me. He goes, no matter what they did to me, I would just send them love. And he goes, and they just, it caused them to be nicer to me, and it caused them to go away. And I thought, well, I don't think that's what happened at all, just as they knew that they couldn't break you down because you were the love guru. But along the same lines, what you're saying, that, it's as long as they're not getting the reaction that they want, chances are they would probably, fold up shop and leave you alone. Again, though, of course, probably depending upon who you are and the level of targeting. So in this gentleman's case, who I talked to online about the Orgone, they completely left him, and now supposedly he sells this. I don't know how effective Orgone is, and honestly, I don't even know what it is. I just know that was his story. And the other thing I wanted to say real quick was, I can really relate, Sean, to, your whole lineup of everything that you laid out in the steps in the very beginning, because I can tell you, I went through every single one of those, almost in that order. And I think I've showed this before, kind of a textbook case, is that the first people that came on scene for me was the military. They weren't bashful about it. They pulled up with a modified Humvee with the gigantic antenna dish thing on it, and right in front of my house. And a few hours later, I got hit with a pulse that I assume was reading my brainwaves, trying to get my EEG, because ever since that day, I've been on a computerized system that I cannot get away from. It tracks me every single place that I go. It crawls around on my head. It locks onto certain spots, and then they, send electric buzzing electricity through me that jets out of my feet. And they do other things too. But getting back to the military, that happened in the very beginning. And I work for corrections and healthcare, and they set up shop with some more weapons at my office. And I'm quite certain that my employer is not happy about this. But they were doing the thing to my heart so badly that I emailed a couple of my coworkers asking them if they knew where the defib kit was, because I said, I really think these people are going to kill me. And about 2 days later, the military showed up at our office, and 30 seconds before they came to my floor, and I'm in a very visible position too, about 30 seconds before they came to my floor, one of the managers said, oh, hey, Dawn, sorry for such short notice, but the California military is here to do an audit on your computer. So, and they're authorized to do this. And I thought, well, there's no California military, it would be the California National Guard or the California Guard. But anyway, so they come up, and they were just hanging around me an awful lot, and they were wearing camos, and they didn't have any branch affiliation tags. I got the one officer's name that was the monitor over me, and that's very key. He was there to check on me, because when you're in that actual system that branches from the military, then it gets handed down to the local and the fusion centers. When in that contract, and this is what I've read before, the one where they can bypass informed consent, there has to be a monitor assigned to that person, and these were the people that were assigned to me, and they came out because I was emailing and, it was on the system. And so I think my employer said, hey, you're killing her. Apparently there was nothing that they could do about it either. But anyway, this guy comes out. He's in camos, no branch affiliation. He's got his name tag on, and on his shoulder is a black sun. So it's a sun. It's all black, and then it's kind of got the squiggly things, where the rays of the sun are coming out. And I asked another individual, a military person, and he just looked at me and he goes, well, who are you? And I said, I'm nobody. Why? And he goes, well, he said what you're kind of describing is black ops, dark ops, shadow operations. And he goes, who do you work for? And so anyway, that's neither here nor there. But bottom line is that's exactly who these people were. But then they go away, but I think they're ultimately in charge. But then they hand it down to the local contractors. In my area, it's a former CIA agent who hires most of his family and friends in this area, and they also include local law enforcement. So I'm pretty textbook with exactly those phases and everything, the physical assaults by reckless driving. They threw me into a lane of oncoming traffic, on and on. Then they went after my kids, engineered bankruptcy, the whole thing, everything that you're describing. And now I'm just in the, torture campaign that kind of changes up. But I am never off of that computerized system. And it's my understanding that if it's the military doing this to you, that is definitely one of the things, because they have the capability to do it, to hook you up to the computer system. I can't go anywhere. They zap me, I'm sure everybody has this happen too, but I guess it's just one of the telltale signs. If there's a difference between if you got put into this program in that fashion by the military and it's being done formally, through those channels, and there is a program exactly like what I talked about, or if you ended up, pissing off your neighbor and you're in a town where they happen to get their hands on some of these weapons, so things can definitely vary and people get put in these programs for different reasons. But I just wanted to say that pretty much, everything that you have described is kind of what I found also. And last but not least, I do think that it's familial because my mom was in the program, and I didn't even realize this until just lately. I kind of had an epiphany, and it really made me cry. She's passed now, but growing up, gosh, she would complain about this ringing in her ears, and it went on for about 20 years, and she was always very sickly. She'd go to the doctor, they would do x-rays, they would do all this stuff, and they would say, well, it's just tinnitus. And so this went on. About 15 years later, she'd seen a bunch of different doctors, they did a bunch of tests, and so she quit going for about 5 years, and so she decided to go back one more time, and this time when they ran the x-rays, she had more than 150 tumors wrapped around her ear inside from the ear that she was bothered with the most. So I do think that she was in that program, and that ultimately, after going on 15, 20 years, that it can cause you to grow tumors. She had to have it operated on, she had to have the tumors removed. But I think that that's exactly what it was. And I think that, like in your case, if your parents were in this, or your mom, or what have you, I think that they just kind of keep it in the family, and then maybe added to that, maybe there's different experiments that they can do, as far as genetics go. But last but not least, she ended up, after all of that, she ended up getting Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, and I was talking, and she died within a year. And I was talking with one of the doctors about the disease, because who had heard of that before, and he said, it's the weirdest thing. He goes, a lot of people can have the gene. He goes, and a lot of people do. He said, but there's something that triggers it. And he goes, and it's triggered in batches. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, we won't see any of these cases. And he said, then all of a sudden, 30 to 40 people in this area all came down with that at the same time. He said, what I'm trying to say is that there's something or someone triggering the disease process in these people. So I thought about that, and I thought, oh, my God, I mean, isn't that exactly what they do? So they see whether or not they can take somebody who is predisposed to a particular disease and see if they can make it active. Anyway, that was kind of all I wanted to say. Just thanks for pointing that out, and I really do agree with you, and even, your theories about not responding to such, because the love guy, the love Oregon guy, got them to go away simply by just, loving them and loving them and loving them until I guess they just couldn't take it anymore. There was nothing left for them. So thank you very much. I look forward to everything else you have to share with us. Appreciate it.
Sure. No, thanks for the comments, Dawn. I'll just got just a couple of those. As far as that rubber bag that holds water, that can be effective. I find it to be a little bulky. Again, when I go to sleep, I wear like a tight Under Armour shirt, and I have like a regular gallon Ziploc bag, and a little bit of water. You don't have to fill it because if it does spill, if you wet the bed. But I just place it underneath my Under Armour over my chest, and they also sell like 2-gallon bags. They're called turkey bags. But the 1 gallon is sufficient. And I sleep next to my girlfriend. I don't want her to know that I have this bag protecting my heart because she hasn't become aware. She sees the strangeness of things, but I try to be a little bit discreet, so they won't hit her. So she's my human shield on one side, but I sleep on my back, right? And I have this bag over me, so they can't hit me in the heart. But the issue is I can't turn around, right? So at some point you get tired of sleeping on your back, and as soon as you turn around, they can hit you from the back and cause the same effects. So I'm hoping that this vest I'm going to buy provides a solution, but otherwise I'm still experimenting on very discreet ways to make my girlfriend think I'm less crazy.
Oh, wow. Hey, well, good luck with that. Can I say one more thing real quick? And I want to ask you, maybe think about this. In all of my research, the one thing that bothered me the most is where's all this money coming from? To have somebody under this kind of a program for that long has to be in the millions and millions of dollars per person. And I was reading a little bit about, there were some articles, and Kate Ryan posted up some stuff, and it was just recently where they were saying that John Kerry and a couple of other folks were talking about a shadow government. There's a government within the government. And then when I heard some of the things about what Hillary Clinton was talking about, and I'm not saying good or bad about her at all, I was just saying she was talking about she's a big she's kind of pushing global initiative. And when I thought about that, this other thing that came up right at the same time was under her care, $3 billion, I think it was, went missing. And when she was asked about that, she said, well, it just has to do with some mismanagement of some contracts. And I thought, this is coming from the White House, from the State Department, and the contracts that probably are completely off the chain are probably the DOD, maybe the CIA, maybe the NSA, for all of these special operations. Somebody's paying for it. So I'm wondering if we could do a Freedom of Information Act, if any of that, or we could ask for an audit to be done. Don't we have some kind of a right to know, where all that money went? You can't just say mismanagement of contracts, $3 billion worth. Wouldn't it be interesting to see who those contracts were with, even if you couldn't see the details of it? I think it would be telling.
Agree. All right. Very quickly, I'm just going to pose a lot of questions here, Dawn. Let me just cover them. So as far as the Oregon guy, I think we SDIs have to be very careful about people selling us cure-all solutions. We all know about snake oil salesmen, and this is a niche market with very desperate people who are very easy to take advantage of. And when someone goes ahead and offers that, you probably want to go ahead and check who their customers are and see if they can verify the stories, because again, we are desperate, we are victims, and too easy to take advantage of. Now, you mentioned some really good points about the computer tracking, and I'll get to that in a second. But I should mention to you, especially you mentioned, the black sun on military uniforms. I Googled that just now, and it comes up as an esoteric Nazi circle. If we're looking at the same thing, but that's not what the point I'm trying to get to. The point is, if you see it, you should all remember this. If you see it, it is likely a lie. Remember, it's all about deception. And whenever I see street theater, whenever I see something going on, I always look in the opposite direction because I want to see the handler. I want to see who's calling the shots. Have you ever noticed? If you actually watch carefully, you see that all the new recruits, they all look nervous, and they can't help but look at the handler, and that's a clear tell. So make sure you look in the right direction. And that's not at what's the easy thing to look at. It's not what's presented in front of you. It's looking the opposite way. Now, moving forward to where the money comes from. Yep.
Okay, go ahead. Well, I was just saying, I mean, I know what I saw when that army rig or whatever that was with that big thing, because it hit me, so there was no deception there. But are you saying that perhaps the guys that came in wearing those uniforms were just other folks trying to make me think that it was the military? I mean, they had their name patches on them.
You know, I can't say either way because in reality, I don't know for sure. What I can say is, again, the name of the game here is deception. And there are very few opportunities where you're allowed to interact with someone who has your best interests in mind. And sometimes you're fortunate where that happens, but you often find where, like, you try to follow up with those people and they stop responding. My point is, I guess, I can't say, right? I can't tell you whether that's the case or not, but I just remind the community that just they have to be very careful about just believing the first thing that they see.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Sure. As far as the money, really briefly, well, where's the money come from? Well, it doesn't have to come from anywhere. And what I mean is that this program, you know, you recruit the local church or some organization to be involved. It builds or even just a block in the city, you know, all the tenants or something. It builds community. You know, nowadays you ask a friend to go meet up and they'll respond, sure, what time you want to Skype? You know, there's no face-to-face interaction, and this program could very well leverage just sort of that association, that sort of common cause bond with your stranger who is now your friend, and that's very powerful as well. Also, there's a perceived power, right? You know, you work with an officer who tells you what you should be doing, and now you think you have a free pass to go speeding, right? Or you know you have this power over the TI to do all these things you're doing. Some people just get intoxicated with that. There's also the other aspect, which is you know, some people do get paid. Don't get me wrong, and but the ideal objective is to have people come on board without getting paid. The other, and with that, actually, just reminded me of something. People who drive, the car harassment isn't always what you think it is. So you ever look on Craigslist, every so often under gigs and so forth, you'll see ads, get paid to drive your own car. Not much is given, but they'll just give like the number of miles and the amount of money that they made. And you know, when you sign up to these weird companies and they're all fronts, you know, they'll ask you like what type of car you drive, what color it is, and when you're available, and you'll be called to go ahead and drive to a location at who knows what time. What those people don't realize is that they're driving by the TI who's sensitized to that color or to that type of car, or you know, you'll see commercials for you know, acting gigs where they'll use this very similar sort of advertising. And finally, we come to drugs. You know, we have perps that do absolutely horrendous things, and sometimes all you got to do is maybe, you know, pay for their rent and just feed them drugs so they keep staying under your control. So all those factors combined are how this program gets paid for. Now, you mentioned the computer tracking. That's really interesting, and I want to have a whole discussion on that some other time. But you're absolutely right. So I'll give you a personal example. Every time I'm frustrated, or whenever I was frustrated, I would purse my lips together. This is one of my only tells, right? My only reactions. And every time I even so much as made a micro expression to purse my lips, I get hit in the face right where I pursed them. Doesn't matter. I was facing a window or facing a wall. I got hit. Like even at the very beginning of you forming that micro gesture, it was so fast. it was so fast that it could not possibly be someone behind, say, a directed energy weapon pulling the trigger, because they couldn't react that fast. So what is it? What is hitting us that fast that it can recognize? It can recognize a reaction so quickly and immediately do something. Well, this is what this program is. This is experimentation. This is experimentation to use computers to automate the process, where then you have to leverage less people. You have less things to worry about, right? This is how you control the populace, essentially. And this is why, and this is what we are the guinea pigs for. Now, there are other reasons, and we can go into that at another time, but I believe that this is one of the more fascinating parts of the program. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I keep getting reports of this, and I experience it myself, and it's just all sort of plays into that story. And I actually do have I did some research, and I do have some of the tracking systems and algorithms that do that. And again, that'll be part of a different discussion. But thanks for bringing that up, Dawn.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you, Dawn, for the question. And we have time for about 2 more, and then hopefully Sean will be able to return to the show, and we will be able to have more Q&As. So I'm sorry if I don't get to you tonight, but let me get to the next person here. Here we go, Massachusetts. See if I can get it to mute. I'm having some issues here. Massachusetts. There we go. Hi, Massachusetts. You have a question for Sean?
I do, Ella. Thank you. Sean, your conversation with us this evening has been phenomenal. Unfortunately, my phone is running out of juice, so I'm going to have to shut off for the night. But I want to thank you for everything that you've said and done and helped us. And I agree with you that we need to engage, empower, educate, engage, and empower. Those 3 things that you said right in the beginning were key as well. Thank you so much for all you're doing. That's it. Thank you.
Good night. Thanks, Carla. Let's see if Sean's there. Sean, are you still here? Sean? Oh, I think his call got dropped. He'll be back. Yeah, his phone call dropped. Let's see. We'll get Melinda on while we wait for him to return. Now my board's acting a little squirrely, so give me just a second. Oh, there we go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, it's Melinda.
Linda.
From Sherman Oaks. Hi, I've had the last 2 or 3 days, each day about between 15 and 20 major Air Force or Navy, they have very similar insignias on their bodies of the helicopters, Apache, a double gun barrel stuff, very loud, very noisy. And I always say, my saying, if you're flying by to harass me, you're going to have a karmic event. You are going to have a personal karmic event if you're flying by to harass me. So that's what I say. I just say it all the time and forget about it. At times I've had 3 Ospreys fly over. Now, I live in a very quiet enclave, Sherman Oaks, California. There's no airport around here except Van Nuys, and, those planes don't go to Van Nuys. Those air vehicles don't go to Van Nuys. They could go to Hueneme, Point Magoo. But still, when I moved in here, there was no noise, no helicopters, nothing, maybe 1 police. Oh, and the police fly over here all the time. It's a very, very low crime area. So it is strange, and I don't know if Sean's on the call or he's listening, but I'm an older woman now. I'm 74. I mean, what do they want from me? It's very strange. This could have been going on I met a man when I drove a limo. He was a billionaire, friend of the Bushes and Cheney and Gingrich and all that. And I don't know, it could have been him who submitted me for this program. He did tell me some information. I told a girlfriend, but I didn't call the sources or whistleblow on anything. I said, who would believe me? You know, forget it. So maybe it's that. He is in prison right now, serving a 12-year sentence for cooking the books and costing $15 billion in stockholder value one day in the stock market. So, but he will be out the end of 2017. But it's still a mystery. I'm assuming it's him because my program does seem very big asset. I have no idea why. They have done health things to me, and they continue to do health things to me. Serious things, potentially serious. So I don't know why. And at my age, just leave me alone, you know.
Hi, Sean. Sorry you got dropped from the call there.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Did you hear any of that, Sean?
I did. So first, let me thank Massachusetts from the call before. And I'm sorry, I missed your name.
My name is Melinda Fee from Sherman Oaks, California.
Melinda from Sherman Oaks. Well, Melinda, I am very sorry to hear about the aerial harassment. And to you all listening, I'd like to tell you how you can stop it. So if you go onto the website FlightAware, it gives you flights that are happening all over the country. But unfortunately, there are certain flights, like military flights, and flights that are you can ask for a privacy waiver where your flights don't appear on these sites. There's a website called adsbexchange.com. That's adsbexchange.com, and it shows it's free, and it shows you can look it up on your phone. It shows all flights over any region that you can pull it up over. So you can essentially log these flights and observe when they're flying over, and you have documentation. Now you want to look for flights that are below 6,000 feet, so 0 to 6,000 feet in altitude, because that's where these flights typically fly. And I think we're going to have my friend, he's a journalist, he's an expert that was the first person to expose the DHS, DA, FBI using these small single-engine planes to harass.
I only get the Cessnas when I'm out shopping. Over my home, it's police, a lot of police, and I live in a low crime area, and Air Force or Navy helicopters, Apaches, one Chinook, Ospreys. I've seen about, over a year and a half, maybe about 15 Ospreys, and they're loud. I'm talking very loud and noisy, almost old-fashioned, like they're ready for the slag heap, because they're so loud and they're big.
Right. So
I don't know.
Do you live near a base or an airport currently?
Well, no, I don't. There's Van Nuys Airport, but that's for, private Lear jets. Point Magoo, Point Wanimi, and what's the one? The one begins with a V. No, V. No, these don't. Burbank is commercial.
Right.
V. Van Air. But, when you say near, what are you talking about?
Within 15 miles.
Barely, no. But Point Magoo and Point Wanimi, that's at the beach. That's in Ventura. More than 15 miles.
So here's what I can do for you, Melinda. If you're not able to use the website on your own, I have volunteered, and I continue to do so. I check the skies several times all across the United States. It doesn't take me very long because I'm fairly proficient with the app. But typically when I keep an eye on various TI's airspace, and I do log it, and I take screenshots, and I continue documentation. So I have you listed at Sherman Oaks, California, and I promise you, Melinda, I can't do this for everyone because I do have a day job and expensive hobby.
The zip code is 91423.
Okay, Melinda, 91423. So the next few days, now I'll try to keep it up as long as I can. I will check your and I'd like you to go ahead and do you email, Melinda?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you email?
Yes.
I'd like you to send me a message and just give me an update, maybe every day or every other day, and tell me what the frequency is of harassment, or even shoot me a message when there was a flyover. So as soon as you notice one, just shoot me a message, and I'll see if I can capture it. But my email is for everyone there out there, statecollegejustice@hush.com. That's statecollegejustice@hush.com. But yeah, Melinda, I'll keep an eye on your airways, and we'll see if we can put an end to that.
They probably won't do it now because, they know everything I say, that record, everything I say and think and do, they know everything. And one way I know they can hear me in the helicopters, which I say you're going to have a karmic event, you guys, is because a helicopter went by and I said, "Oh, you cowards, you didn't even stay for tea." Well, that thing stopped and turned around and went straight back over my head in my apartment. So I know they can hear me. So I know they're listening right, or somebody is right now. But anyway, I will do that. I really appreciate that. Sounds like fun. I should be around next couple of days, so I'll keep track of the flyovers. What about police? Now, police have gotten very, very busy here, and they weren't here at all 3 years ago. Oh, helicopters.
Hello?
Oh.
Are you asking me? So yeah. So the local, can you hear me?
Yes.
So the local police have adopted the methods of now the FBI and DHS, where now they're purchasing their own small, Cessnas and Pipers and so forth, equipped with surveillance equipment and even at times energy weapons to conduct the harassment. And we see this a lot. For instance, I just picked up one the other day in Phoenix, and Phoenix they do this every day. So I was looking at the history of this one Phoenix flight, and they were flying around the Phoenix Metro Mall for 3 hours in concentric circles. And it was ridiculous. Like, what are you guys doing? And, I talked with my buddy. He's the journalist who broke the story. And he was like, yeah, Phoenix does that. That's the norm. I mean, but yeah, local law enforcement is just doing this. And they're so arrogant and, at every level.
It's like, local. Yeah, they're breaking us into a time where there may be martial type law or enhanced police enforcement, whatever they're going to call it, breaking us in. In other words, let's start the noise early, the flyovers early, and extra arms, whatever. Of course, they're never there when you need them, they say. That's what I was thinking.
Melinda, it's interesting. I can't comment on martial law specifically, but there was another gentleman on the line a couple of nights ago. I think his name was Brian, and I think he was new to the community and sounded like a very intelligent man, a successful man, but he said that these people can't be beat, and they have all this power, all this technology, all these weapons. And I keep thinking about that, and it saddens me because there's a TI that has possibly lost hope. But what I like to tell you is that we're one Snowden away from a revolution. If one person involved in this came out, if we have another David Voigt with documents, for instance, to come out, it's over. So we could very see that ends, right? Martial law, in order to control what's bound to happen. But, the end to this isn't going to be... It'd be pretty.
I think a lot of people are feeling a little tense with the election. Who wins and would it make any difference? And is targeting going to stay the same, or are things going to be ramped up? And look at what Obama has done with the NDAA, and that's so fierce. Also, what Reagan did with 12333. If you read those executive orders, I mean, they're really awful. And it's like we've been sold down the river for a very long time, and we're just beginning to realize it. In fact, most people don't even know it. And it is kind of disheartening. But there's always hope. There's always that strange quixotic thing that could happen that could just, move the paradigm to another area in our favor.
The way I think of it is that, we have all of us here, that are trying to organize and do something about this. But we also have 350 million people on our side, because as soon as they realize what's going on, my guess is that they'll join the moral side. So this is why I go forward fearlessly, and I try to do what I do and encourage people to just spread the right information. And actually, I know it's hard. You have to defend yourself and take care of your own means, and by all means, food, shelter, and so forth. Take care of that first. But also, I encourage you all to contribute to the community, because together we are strong.
Thank you, Sean.
Well, they keep putting me in the hospital, and I may have to go in again for another surgery, and it's, that's how they're taking me down.
Well, hang in there.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, me
Thank
too.
you.
Well, thank you what you said. We're going to close on that. My board's kind of freezing up a little bit anyways, but Sean, thank you so much. And I love what you said. It was really powerful and poignant when you said that we're like one snowden away from exposing this. And I love that. I'm going to sleep on that tonight. It'll give me hope to go to sleep on. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it again. And I hope you can come back. And I know there was more questions. So, whenever you're ready.
Yes, please come back. You're very soothing to us.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sean, and thanks, everybody. And we'll be back here on Thursday night. I'm not sure who the guest will be, but we'll have somebody. And if not, we'll have each other to speak to and share ideas and, have support and have a good call. So, again, Sean, thank you. And I really love what you said, and I loved all your closing comments. And, they're very powerful, and thank you again.
Sure. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, good night, everybody.